the service. And Rick and I are just going to do a couple of simple songs, and we've got words to 2 of them. We're going to do 3. And there's words for 2, so please join in if you can. And then Jess is speaking today. And Jeff is just getting ready to go to Zimbabwe. So let's not forget to pray for Jeff. I was just thinking, okay, when we actually get around to prayer time, by then I might forget. So now if everybody knows, somebody will remember. We're going to pray for Jeff today. Oh, and great to see Karen and Renata. Renata, do you remember the last time I said to you, so the next time you come to church, you have to sing Somewhere There's a Place for Us? There's a place for us.
You mentioned that, yeah.
Is it all right today?
Sure.
Okay.
Like now?
No, not now. Yeah, just take a moment, breathe. But I don't know what you're talking about, Jess, although I did see your beautiful slides. But I do, it's a funny mix of songs. So anyway, and I'm thinking that the songs kind of cover a lot of aspects of longing. So. The first one is the Dear If It Be Your Will by Leonard Cohen that we've used a lot over the years. So, and I think it's I think it's more relevant as a prayer now in my thinking than it ever has been before. I'm thinking about a war-torn world. So the last verse of this song, Leonard Cohen writes, draw us near, bind us tight, all your children here in their rags of light. In our rags of light, all dressed to kill, and end this night if it be your will. And I just find it so moving, and it's like we all have our rags of light, whatever we think is the ultimate meaning, and how that splashes on us, and the light that splashes on us and motivates us. And in our rags of light, we're actually all dressed to kill. We're dressed to kill in our pride, but we're also dressed to kill because we'll kill for some of the things we believe in. We see this as humans, and so this is this longing for God to intervene, longing for something better. Be still as it was before. I will speak no more. I shall abide until I am spoken for. If it be your will. If it be your will that a voice be true from this broken hill, I will sing to you from this broken hill. All your praises they shall ring. Be your will, if there is a choice, let the rivers fill, let the hills rejoice, let your mercy spill on all these burning hearts in hell. If it be your will to make us well, draw us near, bind us tight, all your children here, in the rags of light, in our rags of light, all dressed to kill. And end this night, if it be your will. If it be your will, if there is a choice, let the rivers fill, let the hills rejoice, let your mercy spill on all these burning hearts in hell. If it be your will to make us well, and draw us near, bind us tight, all your children here, in their rags of light, in our rags of light, all dressed to kill, and end this night, if it be your will. So I find that I think he put it into words so beautifully, this crafting this prayer, and especially in a time of war, it hits me so deeply, I think more than ever. And then so that's one kind of longing, as the longing that we get beyond this place where in our rags of light, we're willing to kill others. But also, here's another form of longing. And this I actually had in my mind because I think Bill and Marilyn, it's so great to have you guys here. You've just moved here. After being away for years, you've moved back to Calais area, yeah. And you'll be here for part of the year, yeah. And when I think that somewhere a month or two ago, it just started hitting me. It could have been after one of the module students had a worship set here. And we hadn't been using worship songs for a long time. We've been using more songs as reflections of what we were feeling and thinking, because I think that there is something sacred and divine if somebody shares the thing that they care about the most. And so that's how we've been using songs of art, really. And then we had a module time at the university, and one of the students led a worship set, and it was beautiful. And I think it revived something in people. And so I've been trying, if no one else can do it, I've been trying just every week to have like one simple song that just declares something beautiful about the Lord and focuses our heart and attention on the Lord, so that our being can be filled. And that I've been doing that, and it seems to be, I don't know, it seems rich for me, and I've been hearing from a few others that it seems important. So one time, I think the first song that I found was the old song Breathe by John and Mary Barnett, and I think you guys, I don't know if this is the song, but I think you said you watched this video in Texas, and then you were singing along with it. And crying. So then I thought, okay, if this is your first week back, let's do it again. Mm-hmm. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. it's a good thing, isn't it, to sing something simple, full of praise, focus on the Lord, and just open our hearts. Yeah. And I thought we'd do one more song. This is a song I wrote this summer. I've done it here once before. And it's about a different kind of longing still. It's a recognition of the longing of the anchor of love that you receive from someone you love, or from God, or from something that you love. We have a dear friend who's in the last part of life, and I sang this song to her once, just at her house, just to share the song that I've written, but she decided that she wants it at her memorial service. So I want to keep doing it every once in a while to keep it fresh for me too, to be ready to do that. When the storm breaks hard around you, you have to decide. Do you turn and face the headwinds, or turn with them, let things ride? When the winds blow cold upon you, if I can't help you find a way, then I will try to be there with you, honey. I will stay. We're so many miles past normal. Life's quite messed up half the time. And people ask me how I'm doing. I always say just fine. But the winds blow cold upon me, and I don't know which way to go. But you are here. That's the one thing that I know. Holding hands across the distance, touching thoughts I don't know how. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. We should be some of that by now. You are here. We'll get by somehow. There's so many miles past normal. Life's quite messed up half the time. And people ask me how I'm doing. one thing that I know. That's the one thing that I know. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I got so lost in it. Rick was just wonderful. Rick's going, I think I could go here. I'm going, I completely lost the verse. So, I think these songs all reflect the different kinds of longing. Longing for the Lord, longing for war to stop, longing for anchors in our own personal storms, longings, and so I think we can carry that into prayer. Yeah, how many times have you felt this is still the language of prayer? How many times have you felt that that almost everything is right in your life, and there's something that's not quite right that you just really love to fix? Is there anybody who's ever had that feeling? One honest person. Sometimes that's the way it is for me. It feels like, man, everything is going so right, and then there's like one thing that keeps you up at night, Yeah. So, all your children here, Lord, in our rags of light, with our understanding of how we think you are and how the world works, would you come and meet us in our places of need? Would you come and meet us in our broken places? And I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for us to struggle through things and figure out life and learn self-awareness and become mature. It's not too bad. So each time that we have to do this, would you help us? Would you help us to be open to your promptings? Would you help us to be open to the friends and the truth tellers in our life that can help us? Would you help us to become better than we are? Would you help us to become the best version of Jesus in me? I think we're all meant to be unique, but it'd be so beautiful if our best self was growing, coming to the surface. So, Lord, would you be near? And would you hear the cries of our heart for peace in Ukraine and in other troubled spots in the world? Would you hear the cry of our heart for our own brokenness? Would you hear the cry in our heart for the children in Eden Village, where Jeff's going to go? And would you hear the cry in our heart for beautiful things to grow, for more just systems to grow? Would you hear the cry in our heart for our loved ones that are sick?
Be with all those, Lord, who struggle today. Whether it be physical or mental or emotional or spiritual. Those that are discouraged. But,
Would you be with Walt and with Vic, who lost their mom just yesterday, on Walt's birthday? And for their children too, as they think about their own mom. lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. Oh, how I need you, Lord. You are my only hope. You're my only prayer. So I will wait for you to come and rescue me. Come and give me life. I lift my eyes up to the mountain. Where does my help come from? My help comes from you, maker of heaven, creator of the earth. Lord, we want to pray for Jeff, for his visit to Zimbabwe, for the next month, I think, that he'll be able to spend there. And we just ask for him to have the right words when he goes through immigration, for everything to be given an ease, for everything to work out, for him to be able to do in this thing that burns in his heart, to be able to help in this special place. And thank you that you've connected him and Carol and the girls so beautifully to this village, and Jeannie as well. And we pray that you would just give an ease, give a beauty to this whole experience. Protection for sure, bring him home safe and sound, but also just let him go and use his gifts to make something more beautiful there. Amen. So I was hoping that I love Renata singing this song from West Side Story, and it's of course a couple whose love doesn't work because they come from two different backgrounds, and in the story, like Romeo and Juliet. But it's also it's such a longing. To me, it's almost like the U2 song. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. It's like to sing this song is like an expression of, it isn't here yet, Lord. Anyway, I don't know what it means to you, but would you please sing it for us?
Yeah. So I played the female counterpart in this star-crossed lover pair when I was like 16, I've been thinking about, so the song is sung twice in the play. There's this really kind of complicated dream sequence. The song's mostly sung by a child, and then they finish it at the end. But then there's a reprise of the song at the very end where, spoiler alert, the young man is dying, and she holds his hand and she sings the last two lines of this song again. Hold my hand and we're halfway there. Hold my hand and I'll take you there. And I think the thing that strikes me about this longing is that it is both hope and suffering. It is an awareness of the burden of, oh Lord, help me, it's not here yet, right now, and I am suffering. And it is also, but I believe. And that's where I'm at today. So, we'll see, yeah. I'm trying to think of a good key, but we'll figure it out. There's a place for us, someday, a place for us, peace and quiet and open air, waiting time to care. Someday, somewhere, we'll find a new way of living. We'll find a way of forgiving. Someday, there's a place for us, a time and a place for us. Hold my hand and we're halfway there. Hold my hand and I'll take you there. Somehow, someday, somewhere.
What do you need?
Oh,
a clicker?
Right here.
Oh, great. I'll go. Hi. Is everyone okay? Do you need to like get coffee or stand up?
We can use the mic over though.
Yeah. Go ahead. Move around.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. There. Sorry.
Okay, perfect.
I wasn't starting yet. Okay, well, I'm just going to start because we're not taking a break.
Right, no breaks.
All the music was perfect this morning. Okay, so it's been a while since I have spoke up here, but I've actually been thinking about this talk since like the end of February, which is when I was supposed to do it. And except then our family all got COVID kind of one at a time. And by the time we were on the other side of that, it was March and maybe the end of March. And I needed to just pay attention to what was right at hand because this was quite the semester at SSU. And so the water was like kind of neck level for a little while. But I'm on the other side of convocation now, which is great. And so I got to put this together this weekend. It means that it came together differently than I anticipated. But I've known all along that I wanted to talk about deconstruction, which you see here. Even though I am pretty resistant to that word, I just feel like it doesn't quite say what we're talking about, although within church context it seems to be the word that we use that does kind of bring us all together. It puts us on the same page. We know what we're talking about. So anyway, I was listening to a podcast this week, and the woman who was speaking, they hold these spaces for deconstruction, and she was saying that most people who experience deconstruction are pretty ambivalent about the words used for it. So I thought that was interesting. So like I said, I've been letting this just ruminate with me for a while. And another reason I wanted to talk about it is because I thought it would be a good exercise for me to kind of elaborate on a talk I had done in January. So in the middle of the lockdown, I did a short online talk called Longing for a Spiritual Home. And in that talk, I had responded to an update letter that Walter had written to all of the people who joined St. Croy Church when we put out the invitation. I wasn't here yet. Put out the invitation to join us as we stepped away from the vineyard. So in that talk, I read Walter's email update to everyone, and then just reflected on my own journey to SSU and to St. Croix Church, which those two things happened simultaneously, so forgive me for connecting them all the time. But yeah, so as you can see, I've titled the talk A Deconstruction Story, but I've crossed out deconstruction and put love there instead. And that is what it is for me. It's a love story. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it today. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I ready? Yesterday, it was Kai's birthday. He turned 16. He's our middle son. And so on Friday, I spent a couple of hours going through pictures to make a photo album for him because I guess it's a tradition I started. We only have 3 kids, so you do something once and then you create a tradition. I made a photo book for Jaden when she turned 16 and then did the same for Kai. But I have this little set of 3 photo books I was given when the kids were born, like a gift, this beautiful mustard yellow photo books, and I never used them. And then I'm using them as they turn 16, so it's never too late. Okay, so it made this easy to do. Oh, wait, there. That's Kai. How it started. Look at him. He's pretty cute, right?
Yeah.
And this is how it's going. I asked his permission to use these photos. He is at a rugby tryout today after playing 4 games yesterday on his birthday. And after his legs were cramping and everything, and then today he's with Fredericton trying out for U17 for the provincial team. So I'm hoping that he's doing okay. Anyway, have you seen these memes on social media? They're how it started, how it's going. So you can find a whole bunch of them. I think they became popular in 2020 when we started the year with the throwback parties, to the 20s, and we were partying together, and then the world shut down because of a pandemic, and we were stuck inside. And so you can see some where people are just have been living in their sweats for months and online meetings and haven't left home. And then there are others where it's how it started, and it's maybe a professional athlete, and it shows them in their first performances and then excelling in every way. And so they're a lot of fun. But they do skip a lot of the story. So that's what I think. Like most pictures we share on social media, you don't get to see what happened behind the scenes. So for example, this is Jaden and Kai. And just minutes before that photo was taken, our little family with 3 kids under 5, we approached the Mediterranean Sea for the first time. And we had been traveling all day. It was a long day of flying and then taking a bus and getting to our place and loading them up in the strollers and crossing streets, and we get down to the sea and we finally said, okay, go. And Kai took off running toward the beach, and I could see that he was going to fall before he fell, and he just slammed his head into those pink rocks, those beautiful rocks. And can you see the big goose egg here? Yeah. Stayed on his head for most of that trip. So we always could have photoshopped that out. I remember when it happened thinking, oh no, that's going to be on his head in every photo. But the picture, if we had done that, the picture wouldn't hold the truth. And even as it is, it's just 1 second. But seeing the wound in the pictures preserves the memory for us. So we are still in the Easter season in the church calendar. It's the third week of Easter, which means this is the time in which we remember Jesus walking around in his resurrected body, post-crucifixion, before the ascension. And the authors of the Bible, thanks to Thomas, make sure to tell us that Jesus' resurrected body carries the wounds of the crucifixion. I think this is really important information for us and how we think of our own wounds. So, before I move on, I just want you to keep those words, how it started and how it's going, in your head, because we're going to come back to those. And I'm going to ask your participation at that point. Okay. So, this is a photo I took of the Library of Celsus in Ephesus. I went there in 2018 with SSU's graduate program, Peter and Mary Ellen. And this is an ancient Roman building that was commissioned around 110 AD and then damaged by a fire in 262, possibly by a Gothic invasion. Finally, it fully collapsed after an earthquake in the 10th century. And that's all I'm going to tell you about it right now, because it's not my point. Here's a closer look. I'm showing this to you because I want to offer a strong picture of both the work and rewards of careful excavation and reconstruction. The front of the library, you see here, had fully collapsed and laid in ruins along with the rest of it for 9 centuries. And some excavation work began and stopped in the early 1900s, and then it was reconstructed, just the front, between 1970 and 78. Here's a close-up of one of the 4 statues that are there. They symbolize female personifications of the virtues of wisdom, knowledge, intelligence, and excellence. But again, I'm mostly wanting us to focus on the material details in the picture. Look at the beauty that was always there and has so carefully been restored. I've been thinking about embodiment a lot lately and trying to practice being more mindful of my own body, a little less resistant, which is not the most comfortable thing for me to do. And deconstruction, as I understand it, is a deeply embodied form of spirituality. I say that because embodied spirituality or faith simply means a faith that is informed by one's lived experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my lived experience of deconstruction, something I would have described at the time as simply losing my faith, because that's what it felt like. So in my life, while I'd experienced a fracture or two in my worldview prior to this, the real breakdown began as I became a mother. And there we go. As you can see, I wouldn't call it a breakdown, I would call it a breakthrough. Love was breaking through. But becoming a mother allowed love to break through the patriarchal, punitive gospel I'd been given. And once I felt the tremors of that foundation shaking beneath me, I couldn't unfeel them. Becoming a mother also allowed love to break through my dissociation with the grief of my own childhood, my lived experience of abandonment and neglect. Of course, there had been moments of this before, but they were pretty rare for me. So suddenly, when I was handed a baby, flesh of my flesh, I was confronted with my own trauma. It was not what I was expecting, and I read all the books. I began to see with the eyes of a mother what I had lacked. And this was an experience of profound grief. But it was also what might have been my first encounter with true self-compassion, which I think might be synonymous with divine compassion. Love was breaking through, both within and without me. And that breakthrough of love and grief softened the soil of my heart and it made space for questions I'd always had. These were questions like, how could a loving God allow and even will so many of his so-called children to burn in hell for eternity? Now, I know that version of hell might sound extreme to us now, but it's the only gospel I was offered. And when I tried to question it, I was told I had good points, but the reality of hell was just the truth, with a capital T. I was told this in 2006 in a missionary context, kind of Baptist church setting, and I was told this in 2016 in a vineyard context as well, which I'm only pointing out to remind myself that this form of Christianity is still mainstream. I think it's easy to forget this when we break out of it. So which is not mine, but I'll just call it mine for a second, my God is love gospel that I tried so hard to defend in this context was treated like a pipe dream, like it was wishful thinking for the theologically naive. So I'll call those initial tremors a mix of questions and longings and grief rumbling beneath the surface of my life. But then, just 10 months after our daughter Jaden was born, she's our first, with my heart more connected to love and sorrow than it had ever been before, I had 2 miscarriages, and they happened back to back. I was 24, and during those miscarriages, I begged God for mercy, for intervention, for everything. And I'm not critical about that at all. I'm pretty sure I would still pray in this way today. But after the miscarriages, one of which truly could have taken my life, I suddenly wasn't able to swallow evangelical Christianity anymore. An example of embodied faith, I think. I couldn't stand the way people prayed for things that didn't matter. I have much more generosity for this now, but I was 24 and angry. Yeah. At that time, that lens, that way of relating to God as a genie in a bottle we get to pull out when we want to, it started to make me feel sick. And not just because of my experience, but the experience of so many other people too. Particularly people living in just crushing poverty in Malawi, which is where we had been living. So, because of these losses with the pregnancies, when we found out we were pregnant with Kai, we decided to stay in Winnipeg for his birth, which wasn't the plan. And so during that time, we continued going to a Baptist church, kind of a wealthy Baptist church, which Ian grew up in. And it was a lovely church, and they supported us, but it really offered me no distance from this particular brand of Christianity. So, and then a year later, once Kai was born, and just the month before Jaden turned 2, we returned to Malawi with the 2 of them in tow and went back to our work. So throughout our first 3 years in Malawi, Christianity was really working for me. But when we returned, 18 months and 3 pregnancies later, it clearly was not working for me anymore. So, yeah. Or maybe I missed a line. Or maybe it was working better than ever. It's just that I looked a lot like Kai at the Mediterranean Sea. My wounds were showing. And I think in our first week back in Malawi, I found myself hesitantly telling dear friends and faithful Christian ministry partners that I wasn't the same, that my faith had been whittled down to the bare minimum. And when asked to describe it, I explained that I had decided that all I could do with integrity was try to follow the words of Jesus, to love God and to love people, but, quote, I don't really know who God is or how to love him. so I'll just try to love people. You could call this the bare minimum, but you could also call it the greatest commandment. So I made a decision to stop reading my Bible, and I became hyper-focused on meeting the physical needs of people around me in the ways that I could. So with my work hours, I cleaned infected wounds at the clinic, and I shadowed a midwife, doing whatever she'd let me do. Mostly this consisted of checking in women and weighing them. I was deeply loved by our friends and colleagues, but I also felt pitied in a way, and I knew that too much honesty would be too much. So my utter loss of certainty in the gospel was truly not celebrated by any means, and I began to develop a narrative or a belief about myself that I was a doubter, like Thomas, a person with weak faith. In many ways, I felt defective in this context, and I was ashamed. At the same time, I just couldn't believe it anymore. So, around this time, a lot of our friends back in Canada started to leave the church as well. They began to identify as agnostic or atheist, and something became really clear to me. My friends who were leaving the church were leaving because the church wasn't loving enough. Essentially, they were better believers than the rest of us. Again and again and again, I would find myself listening and agreeing with everything they said about it all, and I just couldn't ask them to stay. I really understood the need to go, and I blessed it. I've said this to my friends more than once. You should go, you're too good for us. Which is kind of a heartbreaking thing to say. For me, though, the church had been a consistent source of love and belonging in my life, and I couldn't leave it, or I wouldn't. Admittedly, this is likely the outcome of some mixed up attachment issues for me, so don't admire my commitment too much. But also, how beautiful is it that the church offered me a place for this kind of attachment? And even when I couldn't find a way to participate, I found deep comfort in church communities. It wasn't the doctrine or the right beliefs that had provided that for me, it was the people. I think this is just one of the many reasons why excluding people from full participation in faith communities has been so appalling to me. Everywhere I've ever lived in the world, I've found myself a church, and I think I'm better for it. So that is my love story. I've loved the community church provides. I've loved the mix of people who would never find another obvious reason to be gathered together week after week. I've loved how weird it can be, and it can be really weird. And I've loved the way hearing from many voices has shaped me over time. I think I might go so far to say that the church, what we call the body of Christ, has been the most consistent source of love in my life. So, all of that is true, but I still had to break out of the earliest versions of Christianity I was given. I had to let things fall apart or die. I had to leave faith communities in search of more loving ways of interpreting the Bible and more inclusive ways of practicing Christianity. It's hard to describe how much this has mattered to me or how hopeless I felt at times, which honestly is why discovering this place, first through the podcast online and then when I came here for the first time to study, was such a profound encouragement to me. I don't even think I knew how lonely I felt. I did have friends with similar thinking, but we were stuck in systems that kept us dependent, I think, on the beliefs of our leaders. And I so wanted my leaders to change their minds, but they didn't. And so this place was different. Finally, someone was speaking my language. And eventually, what felt like falling apart in the beginning slowly turned into a treasure hunt for the good within it and the good within me. And this process seems a lot like the work of excavation to me, of slowly and carefully digging and sweeping and restoring the beauty of it all. So Peter often uses the verse from Jeremiah 15:19, which says, "Therefore, this is what the Lord says, if you return, then I will restore you. You will stand before me, and if you extract the precious from the worthless, you will become my spokesperson." And I think that is a good guide for us. I think it's worth the work of extracting the precious from the worthless together. So, that's my story. But I said I'd go back to how it started and how it's going. And I know that we all have these stories of faith shifts or the evolution of beliefs over time. And I'd love to hear a few of us share about that for you. So you can dive into that by sharing how it started for you, or how it's going, or both.
I really appreciate your everything about that talk, but your analogy of excavation, because I think about an archaeological excavation and how long that takes and how painstaking it can be to find something of value and pull it out and brush it off and reveal the beauty of what's there. Because sometimes I feel like I've been deconstructing for so long, and I'm still at it. So that's helpful. That's really helpful to me. Thanks.
Thank you. I should have said, or questions, comments, anything.
That's where I am. I'm still there.
Just super fast, just because of what Karen said. When you think of excavations, archaeological excavations in the 1800s, they were done with rakes. And when in the 20th century, in the 1900s, they were done with toothbrushes.
Wow. Yeah.
Now they're done with lasers.
I agree with Karen, it's a long process for someone, I'd say, I don't know, about 20 years back now. And there were various things that were important in it. One was I was working with students that would not ever have been accepted in church. And I had a couple of employees that were gay that would never be able to be comfortable in the church, so I kept worrying about that. And then I had a really destructive experience when we went overseas, where I got into a situation where I couldn't do anything. I couldn't accomplish anything. I was completely defeated. It's like Richard Rohr's story about how sometimes you have to go down before you go up. And I started searching more of that, but I've always hated the word deconstruction. I like renovation.
Yeah.
You tear things down in order to make something better.
Yeah.
But I really love restoration. And I read a biography of Leonardo da Vinci recently about, it was his life story, but it was about the story of the Mona Lisa and how he painted it. He kept improving on it, and he carried it with him for about 13 years. And then we watched a documentary. This is getting a little long-winded, but it was about his life, and it showed how through technology now they can strip away all the darkened, cracked, like shellac coating, and they can, through the technology, they can restore all the original colors and hues
Wow.
the way he saw them to begin with. And now I think of deconstruction as only the tearing down of the crappy stuff in order to restore us to a place where we can truly hear the love story and truly understand the gospel and the teachings of Christ the way they were meant to be understood, without all the other stuff that it overlays, the darkenings and stuff like that.
Thank you, Dave. That was beautiful. Yeah.
I think it's a lifelong process. We're not going to get to the end until,
Yeah.
because that would be attaining perfection. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there have been times I thought, enough. My
Yeah.
brain has been, I didn't want to consider anything else because it's always, stretching. But I
Yeah.
think that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I just got through reading a book called The God-Shaped Heart,
Mm.
and it talks about imposed law versus design law. And I was raised in a very strong Christian church family, very strong physical family, but I was raised with those constructs in my head, and that's what the norm was at the time. So my growth and I guess evolution was perfectly exemplified in this book, that love pervades and replaces some of those constructs in my head. This is right and this is wrong. Love pervades everything.
I think one of the things I love about the idea of excavation is, I mean, I've never done an excavation, but
Me either.
I can imagine what it must be like to pull something up and to just feel like joy and relief. Like, oh my God, it's still there, it's still intact, look at that, isn't that amazing, look at how beautiful that is. And I definitely have experiences of uncovering memories and just parts of my life but I've also, I think, had experiences of pulling something up and being like, oh, that's broken, shoot.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what to do with that too. And hopefully, with the help of my friends, who can look at these things too, to put things together, the broken pieces, the praise be to God, intact pieces, and making something. Well, that's me, that's mine. So both, yeah, I like the idea of both the oh thank God it's intact sometimes, and the oh well that's broken, that's okay.
Okay, this is a bit complicated.
Yeah.
but I just had this thought in the midst of what everyone was saying, and it led me to a new place in my thinking about this. Thank you. So in the 1800s, people became very excited in archaeology to find pottery because they thought that they could identify strata, they could identify pottery by decades. They thought that they were so good at styles in pottery in different areas that if they could find pieces of pottery, they could really figure out how old a strata was of a town that they were trying to uncover. So they were really excited about it. And they used rakes. And one day in Egypt, they found some workmen were looking for pottery, and instead, when they hit something, they got so excited, but it just turned out to be stupid crocodile skins. And so they were so angry that one of the men hit the crocodile skin with his rake, and it burst open because it had actually been sewn shut. And inside were all of these tablets from 2,000 years ago. And they're the key that helped us to understand how the words of the New Testament were actually used. It was like an ancient garbage bag. And so they were looking for something that they thought was a particular kind of treasure in their excavation, but they found something that completely disappointed them, but in the end was far more valuable.
When I first saw your title slide, of course, I completely misunderstood it. Because, I thought, you said it was a deconstruction story, but you replaced the word deconstruction with love, so a love story. But I read it like it was a title and subtitle. So it was Love, a Deconstruction Story.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, anyway, it kind of worked for me that way.
like it that way too. Yeah.
But I mean, it's funny how like deconstruction is a part of it to get to some other place. Like I'm also the analogy that also came to me is this kitchen of Trinda's house that we're working on, and you know what will be the kitchen was the dining room, and when it was a dining room, it looked like a nice looking room. I mean, and but now in the in between place, it is a mess.
Yeah.
It just looks like something blew up. And of course, and also when you deconstruct, you discover all sorts of interesting things that were covered up by the stuff that was on top. And but that messy place in that process, like Sheila was talking about, before you get to the other side, when the reconstruction or the renovation is done, and you get to the thing that you were aiming at, but the in between can be super messy. I don't know how you avoid that.
Yeah.
I don't think they can.
Yeah. As you were saying that, Rick, I was thinking about, how the grief that is connected to that loss of the first thing that was beautiful, even though we find something much more beautiful, or when you're looking for something and it's the wrong thing, there's this grief that you encounter. Yeah, you've lost your beautiful home. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm not quite done yet. Yeah. This is a picture it's a painting by Krista Hyde. Some of you might know her. She's been here twice, I think. She's a friend of mine from Winnipeg. And she calls this painting an unlikely birthplace. I thought I'd invite you just to look at this painting while I read an excerpt from Stephanie Speller's The Church Cracked Open. Her book is called The Church Cracked Open, Disruption, Decline, and New Hope for a Beloved Community. But I found this excerpt from Richard Rohr's daily email, like his meditation. So I'm going to read that, and then I have a song, and then that's it. Yeah. Okay. So this is letting go of what used to be. God is doing new things, Jesus proclaimed, but only those with new minds and hearts can see a new world breaking through the cracks of the old. If evolution is the language of growth and change, then an evolving faith is one that accepts and even embraces change. While the word change normally refers to new beginnings, real transformation happens more often when something falls apart. The pain of something old cracking apart or unraveling invites us to evolve instead of tightening our controls and certitudes. Episcopal priest Stephanie Spellers is a leading thinker on change and growth in the church and sees the current challenges of church and society as a way of God cracking open people for greater possibility. She writes, institutions and cultures are durable partly because they obey the law of inertia. Even if you think you've exerted a strong external push and knocked a moving object or an entire institution off its set course, wait, just wait. With barely a nudge, the object will drift back to its original path. Think of your own experience. When you see a crack, what's your first instinct? Push the pieces back together and patch it over. Eventually, a contractor comes with the bad news. There is deep damage here, and if you don't address it, before long the whole structure will be fundamentally compromised. You sigh and negotiate. I don't know about you, but I have a surprising capacity to delude myself about how broken the structure is. With enough duct tape and rope, I will get back to normal. I call this rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So it is for a nation and a church. In the midst of displacement and destabilization and decentering, Americans and church folks have been tempted to replace, restabilize, and recenter. Let's return to the building. Let's encourage the protesters to come off the streets. Let's move past division. Let's reestablish majority American Christianity in its former privileged cultural post. Or we could acknowledge the unraveling, breaking, and cracking as a bearer of truth and even a gift. Perhaps, as Alan Roxburgh suggested, the Holy Spirit has been nudging and calling Christians, quote, to embrace a new imagination, but the other one had to unravel for us to see it for what it was. In this sense, the malaise of our churches has been the work of God, end quote. A church that has been humbled by disruption and decline may be a less arrogant and presumptuous church. It may have fewer illusions about its own power and centrality. It may become curious. It may be less willing to ally with the empires and powers that have long defined it. It may finally admit how much it needs the true power and wisdom of the Holy Spirit. That's a church God can work with.
So good, so good.
That's all for today, but I do have a song. So there's kind of two layers. I mean, I think you pick up on it as I'm talking here, to this kind of deconstruction. And one's very much like focused on the church, and the other's quite personal. And I think this song is more of a personal kind of reflection on what it takes to break out and free. So please enjoy. Thank you.
Okay, this is a challenge for me because I cannot see.
Oh,
Where things are. Yeah, there
Is
you go.
that close?
Yeah, you got it wrong.
Do it.
Then full screen.
Yeah, then you go way
Way
over to
over.
the right.
No,
Lower,
lower.
main picture, lower right-hand corner
Lower right-hand corner.
of the video.
So go up a little bit.
There, okay, and then we need sound.
And you might
Aha.
want to turn it
He said shadows make you whole, alive without pain.
This is the 5th show in after the 4-year hiatus. And this is the first day that I feel normal.
I met a prophet, dark as the night. She could see into my soul. Said she'd been watching and had some advice. She said shadows make you whole, alive without pain is a wolf in sheep's clothes. 'Cause if you listen to the lessons that it holds, you'll find the gold. Child, it's time to break the shell. Life's gonna hurt, but it's meant to be felt. You cannot touch the sky from inside yourself. You cannot fly until you break the shell. until you finally break the shell.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, Jess. Bye, everybody.